All right, so this is the Drupal core cross initiatives meeting for June 28th, 2018. We only have 2 initiatives so far, but we hope to have more, hopefully sometime later. So we usually go alphabetically here, and we have a doc that we are taking notes, and we'll publish the video and the docs together. And the first one will be admin UI, but we don't have anyone from admin UI here yet. So we'll jump over to API first.
Sure. Since I haven't been here before, I can't like give an update since the last time everybody met. But I can say for this week, we kind of have some big news. We're going to release our final release of the 1x branch of JSON API. And that's going to be what can stay, I guess, outside of core. And 2x will be the branch that we'll make a core patch for. So there are very few breaking changes. Like we think they're limited to just niche cases, but every time we say that, it turns out somebody gets affected. So we're cutting a 2x branch, and that should come today. So that's awesome. That means that most of our path to core issues are done. I think there's one outstanding. Everything else is done, completed, committed, and good to go. So, yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, I'm looking at the challenges from last time. So that said that the JSON API is still a closed core for 8.6. Is it still targeted for 8.6 or not anymore for core?
I think we want to basically see what happens when we cut this 2x branch. You know, if a lot of people are reporting problems, or it seems like maybe the admin UI just finds features or edge cases that need to be done, we would love to make it an 8.6. But we don't want to promise that.
Do you hope that the cutting the branch will get more contributors, get an influx of people testing it? That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course get core reviews and see if everything passes muster for core, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I'll be posting a core patch that adds the module, and so getting a reviewer on that, maybe a framework manager or somebody who can take a look and make sure that everything seems good, or point out places that they'd like to see improved, that would be super valuable.
You are about to post that, or you have that already posted?
I should have that posted today.
Okay. Yeah. Let's bring that to us, and then we can see any other challenges that we can help you unblock.
Nope.
Okay. So now that we have Fabian on the call, the last time we mentioned that there's challenges with the entity field type data config API to integrate with API first. Are there concrete things that config API you would need from config API, or things that block further progress on API first in config? That would be a real cross-initiative question.
Honestly, I thought I was done. I didn't hear your question. I didn't realize it was for me.
Sure. So now that Fabian from the Config 2.0 initiative is here on the call, do you have any concrete blockers in the config land that you would want to bring on the radar for the config initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that API First is not able to do right now is entity CRUD on entity or config entities. They're all read-only. And the biggest blocker for us to have CRUD on those entities is the validation API. So we kind of have a couple issues outstanding. I can add those to the doc or put them somewhere that have started to try and nail down what an API for config validation would look like. Because once we have that, then we'll be able to safely enable config CRUD. Otherwise, people could potentially just brick their site effectively.
Yeah. Okay. That's for 8.7, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
We have some plumbing for it in 8.6, but we don't have the whole.
Yeah, I think that's predicated on the schema validation happening everywhere and all the time, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Wim is the expert on this topic.
Yeah, more metadata on schemas to be able to validate, etc. So there's a lot of...
Yeah, exactly. So there's actually a problem that we have right now with a lot of config modules not caring about the schema and therefore... So because right now the schema is not really enforced, there's plenty of like, let's not care about it because they don't really see the benefit of it. So the only real time when you work on a site when you need it is when you do translation stuff. Otherwise, like you don't really get in touch with config. And then when you do automated testing with the Drupal test stuff, because there it is enforced. So if we make I think the first step is to just put on the set the screen where all the warnings are like, hey, your config is not passing the schema tests. And then in a second step, not even allow from the UI to save stuff anymore. But yeah.
So I think, Fabian, you did the team did a prioritization exercise recently on what's important to do next. Is this problem area, was this there on the list or not really?
We had a call yesterday, and we did not talk about that, but I will put it in a minutes for next time.
It's a good idea. Cool. Great. Yeah, I think some way to start enforce that even our existing schema would help a lot if we believe that the country modules are doing crazy things and ignoring the schema. Let me write this down as well. They're not even enforcing the schema in the current state. We have even more validation stuff that will break even harder. Or we can introduce even more checks. All right. So that's it for API first. Let's see who else joined. If somebody joined from JavaScript. Nope, but Christina joined from admin UI. So let's jump back and have Christina on admin UI.
Hi there. Do you have the link for the minutes?
I do. It's yeah. You joined later. I will put it in here. Hangouts chat.
Okay. So the updates for at least the design. I'm not sure about the JavaScript part. The UX, we are still working on the survey that is going to, we have the survey ready and it's going to be launched in a few weeks, just before the next DA newsletter, to get to more people. and to gather people interested on helping on next steps. That will be a card sorting test to know, to get inputs for changing some things on the information architecture. And on the UI part, the design part, this week there's been few designers working on that, so there haven't been that much in progress, but we are having a design sprint next week at Dev Days, at least with 3 designers, so I'm really excited about that. I hope there's actually a better or a faster evolvement of the design. And for 7, in a few minutes, we're going to start sharing some issues to work on 7. I hope this weekend or today or tomorrow we can start doing something. We're a little bit late because we wanted to have at least 1 or 2 issues for Dev Days already finished and commit, but it haven't been possible because they're blocked by the design. And that's all. So
and now those issues are unblocked?
2 of them are unblocked right now, really basic issues, and we're going to share on the admin UI channel in a few minutes, and I hope someone wants to start working on that. I hope this weekend there's something happening there, and ready for next week.
Okay. I did commit this week the improvements to accordions and details elements in the 7 theme.
Yeah,
that's per Larry. It should be helpful as a base improvement for this work as well. I think that was the only front-end one that I've seen in the queue, but if there's anything else that I can be helpful with, I'm happy to move those as well.
Well, actually, it's being worked in a repository in GitHub. It's not in Drupal core.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
But if you need any changes in core that are like changes or additions that you need to happen.
Cool, thank you.
All right. We did not get anyone from JavaScript, so let's jump over that and config 2.0, Fabian.
Yeah, hey. So since last time, there was quite a success because the big issue for the config install has been committed. But it's only the first of many because there's still quite a while to go until we can really install any site from configuration. In the current state, what the patch that has been committed now, we made a lot of asterisks to like exclude complexity to deal with in a later stage. So the other issue, the older issue is now a meta and lists a few more of the steps that we need to get done along the way. The next one that's on the list is to install other installation profiles in case you set up the config directory in settings.php and it contains useful things. This is essentially to avoid that we have to document that people should symlink the config directory into like the course minimal install profile, for example, or for other distributions, because the first patch was only for a very site-specific profile. And then we need to allow install hooks to be fired again, and then finally improve the installer UI. We wanted to exclude all the UI for the installer because is like a lot of potential for bike sharing, how it should look like, and we wanted to get the functionality done, and then move on to make it look nice. But they can already be thought of in parallel as well.
Yeah, if you have any ideas that you want to bring to like the UX meetings on Tuesdays, that's a great place to get feedback from various people.
Yeah. So I think Alex worked on the patch today and added a very small UI thing. So we will have already something to share at the next meeting, I guess. Then the other point that we discussed yesterday in the meeting was about having different configuration in different environments, or devel enabled, not in production. And there we more or less decided to put something like config split into core, but improved both in the UI and improved with the core's API. So we will do like both approaches. So we improve the API that is currently config filter and make it simpler and easier to use, and improve the UI of config split and make it easier to understand how it works. Or maybe not the whole of config split, but like the most common needed features. In addition to that, we will meet next week during the dev days and like architect the solution for this.
I would need to understand the config modules better to be clear, but is config filter currently an API and config split just the UI? So this
more or less. So the way because currently core does not have any API essentially to import or export configuration. There's a config importer, but it's a service with lots of dependencies. And there is no config exporter. There is no export mechanism. So, but there is a service, the config sync storage. Like the config storage is, there's one as a service. And config filter, what it does is it wraps this storage and essentially applies a hook to each of the operations of this storage. But the storage itself is not aware of whether the configuration is being exported or imported. So when you write one of these plugins or these filters, then you have to know how configuration, like what is done to the storage when you export the configuration. So first, all of the configuration is deleted, and then all of the configuration is written to it. Which, yeah, is not the simplest way of doing this. And config filter provides this sort of API. It wraps the config sync storage, and config split and config ignore and config exclude, and there's probably other modules that I'm not even aware of. They all provide this, and also custom plug modules, of course. That they all provide these filters and then kind of work that way. And what we want to do is make like a export operation and an import operation. That way the filters can be aware of what is happening, and it will be much easier to implement. And then the config sync is what essentially allows to have different modules enabled in different environments by separating configuration that should be only enabled on some environments out of the global like sync directory. Like this monolithic directory, it splits it up in smaller directories, and then it combines them when you import it. So that's like in rough terms how it works.
Thanks for the background.
But yeah, we will like meet and then find a proper like architecture for this that is a little bit better than what we have now.
Cool. I think your challenge of needing more people is still standing.
Yeah, exactly. This last time we didn't talk about like installation profiles and distributions as we did the time before, but we're still needing people that like basically have an itch that needs to be scratched in this area that can help us find out which things that are really needed, like that have like use cases for these scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I invited Wim to join because he can speak a little bit better to the API first config stuff than I was able to. And Fabian, I think he'd be able to give you a little bit better context about what we kind of need from that.
By the way, okay, you posted a issue, yes. Thanks.
Yes, that is the, let me clarify. Yeah, so that's the overarching top priorities for core REST issue. And the third point down is about full config entity validation support. And there's two issues in there under that bullet. The first one is this one, and that is the central issue about adding config entity support for modifying config via core REST or any other API, GraphQL, JSON API. It all needs this basic foundation. And there's a lot to be figured out there, but what is already certain is that we need lots of constraints to be added to all config entity types. That's the other issue link that I just pasted. So based on discussions with config system and config entity system maintainers in the past, this is the joint conclusion, the consensus of what needs to happen for us to be able to correctly and completely validate config entities or config in general, really. The bridge is already made so that if you specify the correct, it is possible now to get the type data representation of any config, simple config or config entities. And type data natively allows you to have validation constraints. And so now in air quotes, all that needs to happen is writing validation constraints for every single piece of type data that you might have in your config, as in anything that you have a schema for. It's a lot of work, but in principle, that's all that's still left to be done on the foundation side. So that's kind of the high-level picture. The very basic foundations are there. Core REST isn't using it yet because no config entities actually provide the necessary validation constraints yet. But there's nothing stopping us from adding those constraints. Does that make sense, Fabian?
Yeah, I think it can only happen if we start enforcing that the schema actually is up to date.
Oh, yes. I didn't like it was added at a later time, but yes. Plus
yeah.
Yeah. So, what context are you planning to use it for? Is it relevant to what you want to do with config management 2.0?
It was not one of the big like targets that we had envisioned, but it certainly comes handy in other situations as well. We were talking about, or probably it will, because one of the things that we want to do is to be able to share configuration between like different sites, or not sites, but like for example, you have an installation profile or a distribution, and you want to update the distribution without overriding the things that you customized from it.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to update the new configuration that comes from the distribution, but you might have changed something in your site, and I think validating or like making this. So, if, for example, if you try to merge configuration entities together, then we definitely need also to be able to validate them and make sure that it's especially it happened properly.
Yeah, especially if you have things like if you have two different settings for something and they are correlated in some way, and so they need to be validated so that together they make sense. That sort of use case, then merging and being able to validate merging becomes super important. And then,
exactly. I mean, we cannot just blindly merge stuff. I mean, with simple text that is getting updated, or like integers maybe. But even there, if the integer has some other meaning, like how many other things are there? So I think this will be important as well.
Cool.
But like from the milestones, it's not the first, because there's with the having configuration in different environments, like different modules, there's the contrib solutions are already quite mature. But for this other other use case, there is also not really that many contrib solutions that
so
everybody wants to use.
Yeah. So I think this means that there is probably a potential for us to work together more in the hopefully not too distant future. Hopefully we are wrapping up certain things in the API First initiative, JSON API specifically, and then I think the next top priority would probably be config entity support, which means that we should be working on validation constraints for config entities, and then hopefully we can tag team on that. For example, us working on that and you perhaps providing reviews, or vice versa, or both. So looking forward to be able to do that, because there's few people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's not very many people involved in it.
Exactly. Okay, cool.
Yay for working together.
Yep.
That's why we have this meeting. Amazing. So let's move on. So others have a chance to have their concerns raised, and so we can help everyone. So Boyan unfortunately need to leave, but so he's working with the Composer initiative, but he left us a link. The main plat is still awaiting review by framework and release managers. So I guess that's an area where Angie and myself can help with. So that's the 2958021. That's the issue for Composer Supporting Core Initiative. And it's quite a lengthy, detailed plan on what are the different things that need to happen and how to restructure our repo to make that happen. So, I guess that's a task for reaching out to framework and release managers to validate that. I don't know who and when can we reach out to, but we'll see. So that's all we have from William. Hopefully we'll get more details later on. And I don't think we have anyone from layouts at this time either. Nope. Migrate is not present either, but I can report on behalf of Migrate. I've been on the meeting before and I've been supporting various issues in their queue. So at least two things landed for migrations in terms of multilingual support for blocks and boxes that are basically the custom blocks. Used to be called boxes. So block placement, translations, and custom block translations landed recently. And they've also been working on a bunch of UX fixes for Migrate UI to make it easier to fix errors when they pop up, etc., to give some guidance to users, and also various other translation issues. There's been steady progress as well on setting up the multilingual experimental module if we need to do that. There's still no firm decision on whether that needs to be done or not. It depends on whether the rest of the issues around multilingual will be done, and there's still plenty there. So there's a good chance that that we need to lend some experimental module as well. There's a bunch of other miscellaneous migrate patches in the queue that I haven't been able to get to that are more like cleanups and API helpers, etc. So there's some progress in that as well. So I will write that down quickly, and in the meantime, we can move over to Keith on Out of the Box.
Hey everyone, quick update from us. So we, in the last meeting, we went through, we've basically got a spreadsheet running where we've got sort of all the issues that are open at the moment, or the main ones at least, and arranged into sort of what sort of order we want to work through those on. And so in response to that, we've laid out what we think our goals are for 8.6, some of the things we want to bring in or finish off. Accessibility is obviously an important part of that. There's a number of issues open that sort of, they're quite interlinked, but to do with focus styles and also to do with tab ordering. So that's one of the issues that we started. So the other thing that we're looking at is, I may have mentioned this in one of the previous cross-initiative meetings, but we're also looking at how we make the demo, how we set it up right for the demo experience. So obviously we're sort of looking forward to working with the layout features that are coming. But until they're available, we're obviously locked into how display settings works at the moment. And the original designs didn't completely tie in with that. So what I've done is I've opened an issue where I've added some design updates, which just show how we can work with the recipe and the article content type and the various cards and some of the content promoted to the front page, so that we can actually adjust how the theme works at the moment, so that we better support anybody who decides to dive in and really play around with Drupal, which of course is exactly what we want. CSV migration, I believe there's been some work done on that, obviously by the Migrate initiative, and Gareth's currently testing out that. He's got the original migration code that he did, where he had a CSV going, and he's going to see how that wires up to the work they've done and give some review there. I also believe there's been a reinstall button that's been done, and Gareth, I'm a little bit in the shade on this one, but Gareth's been taking a look at that. So that's definitely a very interesting one, because that ties in with the unhide umami issue, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's a misunderstanding. So there's no reinstall button, but so what happened there is that there's a problem with reinstalling Drupal, because Drupal used to write the install profile into settings.php and then making settings.php unwritable.
Right.
So if you want to drop your database and reinstall Drupal, you need to also understand file permissions and change your file permissions on your settings.php, edit the file, etc., or otherwise you're getting a profile mismatch error when you hit the install process. So that's a problem, because people who are evaluating Drupal would not want to go and learn about file permissions as a first step. So that got fixed in 8.6. So the profile is not written into settings.php anymore. And if it's still there in your existing site, then it's just ignored. And in 8.5, there's an RTBC patch that was not yet merged. And this is the final issue that was set as a requirement for umami to be unhidden in 8.5 and to keep being unhidden in 8.6. So it's kind of an important one. So I guess since it landed in 8.6, we can safely say that it can keep being unhidden in 8.6. And it did not yet land in 8.5, so we don't have a way to unhide it yet in 8.5.
Got it. Okay. And that unhide issue at the moment is waiting for manual testing. So we need to round up folks to test installation. That's one you've you've been flagging, isn't it, Gabor?
Yep.
So that's an important one. And our conversations have also been starting to think about media and what we can start thinking about around that support for demoing media. So, but it's early days. We just literally just been focusing on that. That is probably our next port of call. So that's pretty much it for the update at the moment. Elliot's at Dev Days next week, so I know he's looking forward to doing work on Umami.
So I guess we need to get the installed settings PHP issue committed to 8.5 and then hopefully unhide it. And then there's a patch release window next week, I think. So if we can get it done on time, then we may be able to unhide it by next week, maybe. Just playing with dates here, not promising anything. But that's, yeah, so patch window would be first Wednesday of the month, so that's next Wednesday. If there's a patch release of Drupal 8. So we can take a look at that and see if we can make that happen.
Yeah.
All right. F5. All right. We don't have anyone from PHP Unit either at this point. And the workflow is our last one. I think everybody went. Yeah, so from workflow, it's interesting because we're going to meet with the workflow team tomorrow. We, as in a lot of people. So NG, myself, Andre, a bunch of core committers, Tim Millwood, and yeah. And we're gonna discuss about the whatever is blocking their work to help that unblocked, because it's a whole set of issues, and they are in real danger of a module being removed from core if we don't act soon. So it's kind of an SOS thing. But generally, they're working on the improved user-friendly UI for workspaces, and they hit a bunch of front-end issues, and there's generally no agreement on certain things and where to implement certain things that they want to have. So that needs to be unblocked. So we are having a call tomorrow. Did I forget any initiative here? Probably I forgot security updates. People invited to this meeting for security updates. I should put it in the list and then.
Do you mean the automatic update initiative and first doing security updates in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought for a moment that you meant talking about security vulnerabilities in this public call, which was a bit surprising. Cool.
So that team also has a meeting every month, I believe, and they have people invited on this meeting, but nobody showed up. Right, so that's what we have, and Angie wanted to take a look at the blockers sheet and verify some data.
Yes. Okay, let me get that. Okay. So let me do a thingy with the sharing and the application window and the other thing, and then there we go. Okay. Hi everyone. So this is a spreadsheet. It's a work in progress that the committers are using to kind of like track high priority things that are blocking other stuff, and kind of group these by initiative and stuff like that. So I guess what I wanted to know, also the spreadsheet is totally badass because it will like dynamically figure out the like review statuses of all these things, which is pretty awesome. But what I wanted to know from each of the initiatives present here is if there are other issues for your initiative that we should have represented here that we maybe don't, or if I should bold something in particular that's like really important that you'd like us to look at first. That's basically kind of what I wanted to do with this portion of the call. So it looks like we have API first people still, we have out of the box people, we have CMI 2 people, and we have admin UI people. So I guess for API first, this is our list we've got. It's there's some REST issues, some API first issues, JSON API issues. So I guess if there's anything in this list that should be there or should not be there, whatever, that kind of thing, it'd be good to know. Obviously, the fewer issues we have to focus on, the more chance there are of them getting looked at. It looks like right now you guys have a bunch of stuff in the RTBC queue that.
Yep. I think that looks accurate for general API first and for REST. Row 54 was discussed and actually can be removed. It's not going to be like it's irrelevant at this point. And basically everything in rows 49 through 53 are all in the JSON, or 50 through 53 are all in the JSON API issue queue, so isn't an actual core issue. So probably irrelevant for core committers to be looking at.
I think it's still good to track them, but yeah, what I'll do maybe is
yeah, and well,
yeah, or something.
Sure.
You know.
Most of those will be landing very, very shortly anyway. Yep, that's it.
Great.
Unless Gabe has something to add.
Nope.
Okay, great. And then this one obviously is blocked on these other things getting done. So,
yep.
There's nothing for us to do on this one yet. Okay, great. For admin UI, Christina, I don't think there's anything from your side that we need to committed to 8.6. Is that correct?
We need, sorry, what?
For the admin UI initiative, there's nothing we need committed to 8.6 for that, correct?
No. No.
Yep. Not even any 7 themable blah blahs things like this details and accordion update or anything like
no, it doesn't affect right now the
Okay.
development of 7.
Okay, perfect. We don't have workflow, we don't migrate out of the box. So this is kind of what between Gabor and I we were able to dig up is obviously like 82 is what we want to do, right? We want to unhide umami. It seemed like row 85 was pretty important to add that missing media plumbing, because otherwise people, when they're evaluating Drupal, can't actually evaluate like the media experience, which seems like something they'd want to do. Are there other things in this list, or my understanding was the big one was number 86, which got committed. It's still reviewed and tested, but that's because it's for 8.5 now. But was there anything else that needs to be in this list that's like a definite target we want to try and get in for 8.6 for out of the box?
I think it's mainly accessibility items that we've got open, but I'd need to go and split out some of those because you've got the let me just see there. So you've got managing field displays. Yeah,
I don't know if they're 8.6 targets or not, but
yeah, fair enough. No, that looks good. I think probably accessibility items is the main one. The trouble is that they do overlap with some of the one of those other issues there, which is the header layout stuff.
Yep. Okay. This one in particular would be an accessibility one. Maybe I'll bold that one.
It kind of helped. Yeah, fixing it sort of helps solve a number of other things, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a discussion on the demo or the umami meeting earlier this week that I attended where we discussed that tagging them stable blocker was a bad idea, even though usually accessibility issues we would fix for something to be stable. but we don't really want it to be stable anytime soon, so it can still adapt to a bunch of other features in core. But we still want to fix the accessibility issues anyway. Like, we don't want to demo something that's not accessible. So I think we discussed to tag them 8.6 targets or something. So if that happened, that may be a good tag to look at for Umami. If that didn't yet happen, then we should be able to do that.
Yeah, 8.6 targets are hard. Like, we used to do this not in a stupid spreadsheet, but we used to do it with tags, like 8.6 target or whatever. But then the problem was anyone can add an 8.6 target, so it was really hard to tell which were the ones that the committers and or the initiative coordinators said were 8.6 targets versus just rando was like, I want my patch looked at, you know. So so I guess whatever tag you decide on, just let me know, or Gabor know what that is, and we'll make sure that this reflects the stuff in that list. So composer, we talked about that. We need sign off on their plan. I'm guessing they're not targeting anything for 8.6, so we can probably postpone that sign off till after alpha, so we can keep committer focus on the stuff that can only be committed before feature freeze. But I guess it'd be good to know that if there's anything they're trying desperately to get into 8.6 or not. But it feels like that's pretty tight at this point.
They didn't seem to have the info in the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So there's no requirements for 8.6.
Yep. All right. So I think we can maybe make that gray also and say.
We'll ask that on issue as well.
Sensitive. Question mark. Cool. Great. Config management 2.0. I have very little knowledge of what issue we should be really trying to get into 8.6 here. I mean, you have a core committer on your team, so to some extent that's not that important that it's reflected here, but there's others who could probably review that stuff, especially if Alex works on any patches. It's useful to have somebody else kind of helping with that. So did you have any suggestions?
For now, I think this one is the most important one. Because that one is the one that like prevents us from telling people that they should symlink stuff, which is not good. But like the rest, we will like. There's for the rest of the issues there's not really patches actually. So I think this one is the 8.6 target, and then the rest we will target for 8.7.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and that's the end of my list. Awesome. Thanks a lot, folks. I appreciate that. And we can revisit this again on the next call, whenever that is. I think it's in a couple weeks, which will kind of be like the drop dead zone. But yeah, I guess if you have things you want to escalate to that list, then just ping myself or Gabor, and we can get it added there. And then it's something that I'm going to try and review with the core committers every once a week right now, and then like every couple days as we get closer, like that kind of stuff.
So that reminds me that we somehow jumped over media in the list. I don't know why. Yeah. And media, a lot of we've had this meeting 2 weeks ago, and they landed Wombat support in the past 2 weeks and media library in the past 2 weeks. And a remote video media type that uses the embed handling. So that's not bad.
Yep. And then I think their next most important one is creating a field widget for media library, because it feels like if we don't allow people to select from existing media, then they can't actually use the media library that well. So, and then this uploading one sounded like that may or may not make 8.6 at this point. It's pretty dicey.
I'm making note of those. They also found the issue with not having a view mode for remote video, I think.
Yep, I was just trying to look at that before this call, and Simply Test Me was down, and so it that did not happen. But I'm going to try and get to that today. But if anybody else gets to it first, that's also fine. Something's fucked up with my MAMP, and I have to troubleshoot it, so it's not going to be like immediate at all.
Right. I think that's it for our meeting.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for coming, and keep up the great work, and see some of you next week in person.
Yay.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Nice one. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.